Well, hello and welcome to another Thaiger Unplugged, Thaiger Weekend update anyway. Thank you for joining us here at Boat Lagoon in Phuket. As you can see, it's a bright and sunny day. We've got plenty of bright sunshine today. Yesterday, it literally poured most of the day. Well, certainly where I was on the island. But today, much better and looking good for a much better day weather-wise. Some very nice boats here today. My boat is, it's out of the water at the moment, but look forward to getting in there and taking a cruise out to Phang Nga Island sometime later today. I wish that was true, but it's not. Anyway, there's plenty of good options to take trips out to the islands. But anyway, from here, we better get stuck into today's topics because there is just so much to talk about at the moment. And as you know, there's been a lot of changes to the regulations that sort of run our lives here in Thailand in the last couple of days. And they're mostly in action now. So things have really changed. And as you can see from the title, I'm saying Thailand is open. And it's really open. There's not really very much stopping you from coming here at the moment. The shirt, well, I haven't been around much for the past couple of weeks, so I thought I'd wear something nice and bright to say hello to you. I don't usually sort of get around in this type of stuff. There's some friends enjoying their breakfast here. It's going to be a good day. Let's get sat down and have a talk, see who's online, and have a talk about what's happening with Thailand and the Thailand Pass. Get myself situated here. I think we want a boat, don't we? Can't really do this without a boat. Excuse me, I'm going to go and get a boat. There we are, there's a boat. It's always nice to have a boat around when we're talking. So, in regards to what's been happening with the Thailand Pass, there was some big changes announced on Thursday night. Now, earlier in the week, we thought there might be a delay in getting some of the legislation, some of the fine detail worked out for the reopening of Thailand in regards to masks and things like the opening hours in the nightlife. Well, we were all a bit surprised when the Royal Gazette posted late on Thursday night announcing that, in fact, the compulsory wearing of face masks in public, I'll get to the details in a moment, was gone. From Thursday night, you are allowed to wander around outside in Thailand without a face mask. Now that's a pretty big change. We thought it may be delayed until after July the 1st, but no, that's the situation now. Same with the closing times. We thought that might be delayed until after July 1, but no. As of now, probably last night, you can go to a bar, you can go to any of the nightlife around Thailand, and they would be open well past midnight. Now, you could probably argue that they were open well past midnight before the actual announcement, but now they can do that officially. And so that's current as of last night. So big changes. All right, so let's have a talk about some of the other things that happened. One thing is that when it comes to the Thailand Pass, that will remain intact until next Friday. So if you're coming to Thailand right now, or until the rest of this week anyway, you'll still be expected to apply for and get approved a Thailand Pass. That whole pre-approval nonsense we've had to go through since November the 1st last year. So the Thailand Pass remains in force until next Friday. Now, as of July the 1st, the Thailand Pass and the compulsory $10,000 US dollar insurance goes. That will no longer be necessary. So you won't have to pre-apply and get approval to come to Thailand. You can just arrive here with your passport and walk right in. Now, okay, there are caveats. One, you'll need to bring your vaccination documents, and they'll be now approved at, talk out here going absolutely mental. You'll need to present those vaccination documents at immigration. Now, for those people who are either unvaccinated or under-vaccinated, you'll need to get a PCR test or a professionally approved ATK test in that 72-hour window before you get on the plane and come to Thailand. Now, last week, the CCSA announced that if people arrived without either a negative PCR or ATK test or vaccination documents, that they will do random checks at the airport. Now, we don't exactly know how that's going to roll out, but my feeling is, well, two things. One, if you arrive without any documentation regarding your vaccination status, negative test, vaccination documents, that they will do an ATK test at your cost at the airport. I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen. The other thing is, I'm not sure if the airlines are going to let you on the plane in the first place unless you've got some either negative test or vaccination documents. So if you do intend to come to Thailand, don't pack up your toothbrush, your bathers and a nice hat unless you've checked with your airline what their status is regarding you coming into or getting onto their planes. We are going through this whole sort of unravelling of a whole lot of COVID restrictions right around the world. And it's not just Thailand. And the airlines are in this predicament where they're trying to figure out exactly what they should be doing and what their responsibility is. It also depends on where you're flying to as to some of the regulations that they will have applying on the aircraft. Now, if you're flying, say, from America via, I don't know, Seoul and then through to Bangkok, will you be required to wear a mask from the US until South Korea, or when you transit the plane and get on the plane at South Korea coming to Bangkok, will they require a mask then? I've found generally on the aircraft, they're pretty fastidious about making you wear a mask if that indeed is the rule. The other thing I suppose to say is that on domestic flights in Thailand, well, let's get to the sort of the caveats on face masks, because whilst currently now, it's no longer required to wear a face mask when you're out in public. Wander down the streets, wander along the beach. Well, of course, that was just patently absurd that you had to wear one on the beach in the first place. I don't think anybody was arrested for not wearing one. But certainly wearing masks in public spaces is no longer required. It's called a discretionary situation. Now, there are some places, though, you are still required to wear a face mask here in Thailand. Certainly at airports, I think you're going to be picked up if you're not wearing a face mask in the airports. They are, at the end of the day, government buildings, and it's still required for people to wear face masks in government buildings. Now, the airlines domestically are still requiring passengers to wear a face mask during the flights. And again, I found that the flight attendants, with nothing much else to do at the moment because the catering services are currently banned on flights in Thailand. I'm sure the situation is going to change fairly quickly. But currently, with not much to do, they are going to, okay, so somebody talking about tests on Thai Air. Okay, there's going to be people who are travelling to Thailand over the next couple of weeks. They're going to be telling us what in fact is happening. But I sort of figure that if you are checking in at the moment, flying into Thailand or transiting into Thailand, that they're going to be checking on your vaccination documents or a negative PCR or ATK test. Anyway, I was talking about the airlines. Yeah, the airline attendants don't have a lot to do at the moment, so they like going around and saying, "Excuse me, sir, would you put your mask back over your nose?" I've been accused of dropping it down because it's a pain in the ass to wear a mask on a plane. I complain after just my 1 hour flights out of Bangkok back to Phuket. But anyway, that's the situation. So airports, aeroplanes, also public transport. So if you're jumping on the BTS or MRT or any of the public transport in Thailand, well, mainly around Bangkok, isn't it? You're still going to be required to wear a face mask. Also noted during the week the story coming out of people being asked not to flick their hair. Not a problem that I have. No one's complained about me flicking my hair on public transport. But people who have got long hair, they're being told, please don't flick your hair in public transport. Don't they have other things to worry about? Anyway, it apparently is a problem, and some people complained about having hair flicked in their face. So that's apparently a problem. Okay, let's have a talk about shops. Now, if you go into a shop, you may still be required to wear your face mask. There still may be people doing that silly temperature check at the entrances of shops as well, and other office buildings. I think they're definitely on their way out. So let's have a talk about the rights of these private shops to still require you to wear a face mask while you're in. Well, they are, as private enterprises, fully entitled to require you to wear a face mask, and then it's up to you to decide if you want to walk in or out of that shop. So, as I said, we're going through this transition period, and it's going to take a while for Thais to let go of the masks for whatever reason, and I don't want to get into the mask debate. I think we've had that over the past 2 years. It's really now just a matter of the current laws or requirements or expected public behaviour in Thailand, and what the situation currently is. So as far as I'm concerned, if you are arriving in Thailand, it's going to be great to be able to wander around outside without a face mask. You still might get a few sideways views. That's just the nature of people. I think Thais are quite suspicious. They're quite connected to their wearing a face mask for a whole lot of reasons, mostly fear. So we're now at a situation where we're going through the transition period, and you are going to be required to wear masks in some locations. Just pop one in your pocket. It's really not a big thing. I mean, people get so upset about face masks, but it's just not worth getting angry over. Really, there are much more important things to worry about in the world. But pretty much, as far as you walking around public spaces in Thailand, that's no longer a requirement. I just went into 7-Eleven this morning over the road to get some milk, and yeah, they still got the temperature check at the door, and everybody in the shop was wearing the face mask, including the people behind the counter. So it's going to take an edict from some of these big companies, not only 7-Eleven, but the other convenience stores. The operators are going to have to tell their staff, hey, you don't have to wear face masks anymore. They're going to wait until they get those directives, until they start taking off their face masks. So I still wander around with this. It's probably largely useless, certainly in regards to catching COVID. If I was coughing and spluttering though, this is going to stop my coughing and spluttering getting onto anybody else. So if oh, hello, do you want to come and say hello? A little chihuahua down here. Do you want to come, am I allowed to touch you? Oh no, probably going to bite me. That'll cause a bit of an issue. So let's say hello to some of the people here today. We've got a lot of people online, and thank you very much for being with us on this Saturday morning. Currently 16 minutes past 10 in Phuket, and as I mentioned, the sun is out today compared to yesterday when it was, well, quite rainy on this central east coast of the island where I live. It pretty much rained most of the day. My car was taken by number one, so I had the motorbike. And yeah, it was a pretty unpleasant day, but I did get out a few times to grab some food and stuff. So hello to Scott D, great to have you online, and thank you to all our members, by the way. Drumcula, also big thanks to Alan, focus my eyes today. Alan, now Alan, I'm going to bugger up your name. Let's see, I'll just say Alain. Okay, probably a French name, and I'm not going to boulderize it, so I'll just say thank you very much. He asked the question, does the mask mandate stop today, or is it only an announcement? Well, no, from Thursday night, it was never actually a mask mandate, so I'd call it just a mask requirement. But yeah, from Thursday night, last Thursday night, you are not required to wear a face mask around in public places. although the government says it is discretionary, and also they recommend that you do when in busy situations, but they leave it up to your discretion. Okay, what else have we got? We'll say hello to the Snives. We'll say hello to, just trying to go through the members here. The Snives, you've got a lot to say today. Now, a lot of them are talking about their favourite musical acts. I do want to have a talk a little bit later about this. It's my ticket to the movie Elvis. I've got a bit to say about that, so we'll have a talk about that a little bit later. John Peake, also 212 Roger, and Tony the Tiger, 86. And John, we've got John, and yeah, so there's plenty of people here, plenty of favourites. Ryan Bishop, good morning to you. And yeah, we look forward to getting to some of your questions soon. Well, God, it's going crazy, the old comments section. I'm sorry, I'm just not able to talk to you and read the comments at the same time. Anyway, so let's have a talk about our next topic today. And that is references we make in the Thaiger of one hot story, which I'm not really going to discuss this morning. We referred to it as the C word, or the happy plant, or the green plant. The reason for all this nonsense is that YouTube often demonetizes the clip or the posting or this if we do mention these drugs with their full name. So the argument about us talking about the C word and stuff is with YouTube, not with us. We talk about it quite frankly, but we do have to sort of talk about it in code. PG Santa, nice to have you with us as well. Do you have any info on the timing of vaccination and entry into Thailand? Will it still be a requirement of having one within the last year to get a credit for it? Now that's an interesting question. My understanding is that if you've had vaccination at any time and it meets the standards, in other words, in most cases, except for what the Johnson & Johnson single dose, I think they require the 2 full doses, or whatever the required doses are. Now, I was vaccinated back in April last year, and no one has stopped me when they've asked for my vaccination certification on planes or anything, saying that it was out of date. So you might have to go to, I was going to say go to the Thailand Pass website, but that's just no longer in force. I might do a bit of a dig around later today and see if there's any update on that in regards to required boosters. I know a lot of Thais have been told they need to get the boosters, like teachers and people working in the public service. But as far as people actually arriving in Thailand, my understanding is, and I'm heading out of the country sometime over the next month, that my 2 vaccinations I had in April are still broadly current. So I might have to do some homework for you, PG Santa, but a good question. So anyway, we were talking about the C word. There's been a lot of backpedaling over the past week about the announcement made on June the 1st, which appeared to legalise and decriminalise the C word in most cases. And there's certainly been a preponderance of new little boutique shops and sort of cottage industries appearing magically over the past 10 days, people even posting on Facebook about it. I think if people still think that the announcement made by the Thai government has got anything to do with the government's preference to liberalise or legalise a drug that was formerly a Category 5 drug for recreational use, you are sadly mistaken. That certainly is not the intention of the people who are running the government. There's a lot of politics behind this, and it's got nothing to do with the government just looking on the people that enjoy using that particular drug with any great favour. So yeah, watch this space. I think you're going to see a lot of rolling back of what a lot of people thought was just open slather in relation to the C word. I couldn't care less. If you want to use it or if you don't want to use it, that's not my business. If you want to use it recreationally in your own time, I don't care what you do, and it doesn't particularly bother me if it's legal or not. And that's a totally different argument on a different day. I'm just trying to pass on the way I'm interpreting what's happening in the government at the moment and these announcements, and bringing you my perspective. Now, a lot of people will disagree with it, but that's okay. This is my spot and I'm giving you my perspective on it. But certainly for what people think has been the announcement is certainly not what the intention is from the people leading the government. Big power plays there in the government at the moment, remembering that the coalition running the country at the moment is made up of 17 different parties. There are two parties who are very important to the coalition remaining in government. One is the Democrats, and the other one is the Bum Jai Thai party, which is led by Anaton. He's the public health minister and also a deputy health minister. He's offering some 51 votes in the 500-seat lower house. Without his support, the coalition is out of office and the opposition would be able to cobble together the numbers. So the whole situation regarding the C word, you can work it out with a calculator and just count the votes in the lower house of Parliament. I'm not going back to Australia. When I leave, I'm either going to a short trip to India or Turkey. I'm still working that one out at the moment, and I was waiting for all the Thailand Pass kerfuffle to lift before I did because of my insurance situation. It was going to be just, I thought, a paperwork nightmare, and I'd end up being disapproved to not come back. So it's all quite complicated, but I didn't want that complication. So my trip out to have a short trip away for a week or so will be during July, but it's not to Australia. Okay, so that's in relation to the C word. Now, the next topic of discussion, and we'll get to more of your questions very soon, is an announcement during the week from the new Bangkok governor. And the headline says, Bangkok approves 7 places to protest under the Public Assembly Act. Now, according to the statement, clarifying specific places in Bangkok would help the city avoid gatherings from affecting society's peace, public safety, good morals, national security, public convenience, rights and liberties, and the human dignity of others. Now, there's actually a list of the places where protesters will legally... Is it legally? Is this an actual statement? Well, yeah, I'm not sure. This is, I suppose, just one of those guidelines that they've announced. It's not ensconced in law, but there's 7 places. Now, out of the 7 places, I don't really know any of them. One's near the Chatuchak market. Where's that one? The Thai Japan Bangkok Youth Centre in Dang. Dindang. I know where Dindang is, but I've never heard of that particular youth centre. Alan, just addressing your question again, is the mask mandate lifted now or only announced? It's lifted, okay? And it was never a mask mandate. It was a requirement under the emergency decree. That emergency decree is going to be pushed past the end of July. It was meant to finish at the end of July, but they're going to extend it for whatever reasons. I think the question is, does the emergency decree affect you as a tourist or an expat? The answer is absolutely not, in no way. But the mask requirement has been lifted in public places from last Thursday night. Hope that answers that question. Okay, so back to these places where protesters can gather. The 72nd anniversary stadium in Minburi district, the Chilerm Praket Sports Centre in the Tungkru district. In other words, these are little places that are much little used, and there's not going to be any crowds there, any cameras, or any people for that matter. So the question is, excuse me, I'm just going to have to scratch my nose. That feels better. I wasn't going to do it on camera. The problem is, of course, the protesters want to sit and protest and stand and wave their signs in places where there are lots of people, even tourists, because remember, a lot of the protesters do wave around their signs in English because They want English-speaking countries to hear their pleas. They want the crowds, they want the cameras, they want to disrupt things. That's what protests do. So shuffling them off to these 7 locations is all very well, but it's not what the protesters are going to do. I would say the protesters are largely going to ignore this edict from the Bangkok Metropolitan Authority under the guise or the announcement of the new Bangkok governor, and they're just going to continue doing what they're doing. I do think we're going to see a lot more protests in the near future. I think now that these mask mandates are gone, there's going to be more people moving around, and certainly with an election coming up early next year, I think we're going to see the protesters out to make their point and try and influence the result of the next election. So some people are sort of postulating the idea that the Thai government has extended the emergency decree to control the protesters. I don't think that's the case, but I think it's all to do with their genuine interest in trying to be able to change things in relation to the COVID pandemic quickly if they need to. Note that there's been a slight rise in cases with some new Omicron variants over the past week or so. I don't think we're going to see any reversal of the Thailand Pass coming back or a new wearing of masks, but certainly I think the Thai government are wary about what's going on, and they have just extended the emergency decree. Mohammed, you've asked a question. My goodness, you've sent 25 what's AED? I don't know what AED is, but 25 of them is very generous. Hello, Tim. From Dubai. So from the Emirates States. Love your news channel. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much, Mohammed. Appreciate you being on board and sending that very kind donation. So the protesters trying to shuffle them off into 7 dark little corners of Bangkok. That's just not going to go well. I'm pretty sure they're going to ignore that. They're going to go to the Ratcha Prasong intersection. They're going to go to that big intersection, one of the busiest intersections, which is just one, I don't know what the intersection's called. It's the one outside MBK and the Siam Discovery Centre. That's a really big intersection where you've got the intersection of BTS lines and everything. So I think we're going to see kill your TV and everything goes away. Sorry, I do get distracted by the comments. I shouldn't read them until I really want to address them. But I think we're going to see the protest at certainly the Democracy Monument and that road to the Victory Monument. They've been playing cat and mouse with the police for a couple of weeks, and I think we're going to see them being quite clever the way that they do their protests, but they're certainly not going to be shuffled off to those 7 areas. Public spaces under the Ratcha Witpa intersection in Chatuchak. Where is that? I don't even know. I know where Chatuchak is, but I've never heard of that particular interchange. Okay, so let's now get on to our next topic, and I will get into your questions very soon. The talk this week from the tourism industry, not so much the tourism industry, from the tourism and sports minister. Now he's proclaiming the wonder that the future of Thai tourism is going to be from, guess where? Malaysia. So guest just arrived here. Plenty of distractions here, but I shouldn't get distracted. You are my focus. So yeah, they're saying that the Malaysians are coming. Now he cited some numbers of people arriving in the kingdom over the past 4 or 5 months. Now these numbers are from January the 1st up to May the 24th. And the highest number of arrivals, travellers, has been people from India. Indeed, just over 100,000 people over that period, January, February, March, April, May. So nearly the first 5 months. Thank you, Daryl, very much for your very kind donation of $5 Australian. The pink notes, I remember the pink notes with a portrait of Her Majesty the Queen of England. So I thank you very much for that $5. But the second highest number of arrivals into Thailand over those first 5 months has been Malaysians, 78,523. Now, I started looking into where these Malaysian people are going, and not surprisingly, most of them were coming across three or four border points in the southern Thai border or the northern Malaysia border. Now, so these are not tourists. These are mostly like day traders or people who live on that zone along the border, just going about their daily life. Now the border's open, they're going backwards and forwards. So that's all very interesting. But he's touting that these are all tourists. So look, I suppose you just make up the sums where you can, and you need to make sure you're producing the figures that's required by the government. But at the moment, certainly I think most of the Indian people coming to Thailand are genuine tourists, but the Malaysians are a little less so. Let's say that a good 20% of those people are just popping in and out across the Thai border, probably for just a day at a time. So getting back to the way they've lived their lives for the last 100 years or so. Acknowledging, of course, that there is still an insurgency in place, and that people travelling to the south of Thailand should just be wary and perhaps have a guide or go with a Thai taxi or a Thai tourist van. The roads basically have not been targeted. The main roads from Thailand through into Malaysia, they've rarely been targeted. But we do acknowledge that there has been the insurgency in southern Thailand, and it still continues. Okay, so that's a lot of the main topics I wanted to have a talk about today. Goodness gracious, it took me 34 minutes to say all that. I probably could have said it in 2 minutes, but you've been distracting me. So now I'm going to go to your distraction. I'm going to throw another one in myself, by the way, and let's say I'm going to talk about the king. No, not that king. I'm talking about this one. So I went to see the new Elvis biopic, and that's really interesting because a lot of talk about it and a lot of dissenting opinions, and people either love it or hate it. A lot of people sort of mesmerised by it, and there is one standout part of that performance, and I'm going to have a talk about that as well. Before we talk about that, and acknowledging the person that was Elvis, he was the highest selling artist of the 20th century, individual artist, and he had a profound effect on pop music, or everything that followed from the 1950s. His influence, he influenced the Beatles and all the sort of the Brit pop and a lot of American pop and just about everything that was to follow. So we're going to have a talk about that. But interested to know what you think was the most influential musician or musicians of the 20th century. So I'm sure that'll get you debating, and we'll read some of those out. So let's go to some of the earlier comments and see if I can pick anything out that is worth addressing. Well, it's all worth addressing, whether I can get to it or not. People's freedoms are slowly being eroded away. Glad my time on this planet is coming to an end. Not really a big fan of being a sheep to repressive governments. That's from Jelly Roll Johnson. Jelly Roll, you've got a lot more years ahead of you. So, our government's cutting into... I think there's sort of... I've lived on the planet for some 63 years, and I've probably seen less oppression from governments rather than more. A part of the reason I think I probably left Australia was I was getting sick of the nanny state approach. And certainly in that case, there was a lot of sort of the government interfering in our personal lives. I'm not really a fan of that. Coming to Thailand, there's very little of that, putting the pandemic aside. So I think it's an interesting dynamic, saying that governments are oppressive. I mean, governments are elected, somebody has to run things, somebody has to do the banking, somebody's got to collect the taxes, and empty the rubbish bins and fix the roads. And government's moving into our personal lives. I'm very against that. PG Santa, we're not going to get into that issue, but I think government's meddling in people's lives is something that we probably need to resist. Tim, do you go clubbing? Says Swilyong Sim. No, I don't go clubbing. Last time I went into a nightclub was, oh my God. Well, no, I did go in for a Thaiger report, some 5 years ago, but I was in and out in about 10 minutes. Yeah, no, I don't go clubbing. Haven't been as far as going to enjoy myself for 30, 35 years. Doesn't that make me old? Okay, so let's have a talk about what people are saying in regards to who they think is a significant... I've gone straight past the... Here we go. How can there be fascism on both sides? It's far-right ideology by definition. Miles Davis says, ooh, look, okay, Jimi Hendrix. John Peaks says there's a lot happening. Again, Tim, a lot of in-your-face in Australia is wrong. Nanny state not so bad once you collect your pension. That's a very good point, Rick. Am I going to be lining up for a pension from my country of birth? I don't believe I'll be eligible, but I'd be foolish not to give it a go. I mean, it's sort of money for jam, and good Lord, I paid a lot of taxes for a long time in Australia as both a businessman and an employee. Mark Lynn, Tim, come back to Oz for a while. Ha ha ha, it's gotten so bad here now. Well, I'm not going back to Australia to live. Hopefully I might pop over there for a short time for a visit, friends and family, but my home is in Thailand, and this is where I'm going to be spending at least the next period of my life. I'm going to have another scratch of my nose, excuse me, whilst you enjoy a view of what's happening here at Dean and DeLuca. And we're back. Young Elvis was cool. Old fat Elvis was just sad, says the Wu-Tang Life. So let me just have a very quick talk about Elvis, the movie. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was actually surprised, it's directed by Baz Luhrmann, an Australian who's made some very cool movies. Romeo and Juliet. I'm going to forget some. The Great Gatsby. What's that first one he made? Strictly Ballroom. Australia, he made that epic. A lot of people hated it. I loved it. But this is definitely a Baz Luhrmann film. It was made up on the Gold Coast in Queensland and had a lot of Australian actors playing some of the bit roles. But the two main roles are played by Tom Hanks, who plays the manager of Elvis for his entire career, Colonel Tom Parker. Somewhat of a parody, I thought he played. He sort of comes across as the baddie in the whole story, and clearly it was quite a tortured relationship between those two gentlemen, and they both sort of used each other in a way. And Tom Parker many times said that he made Elvis, but of course it may be that as a manager he brought him to the attention of filmmakers, TV networks and the music industry in a bigger way. Whether Elvis would have risen through any other management, it's very likely. But this film is, it's a biopic. It spans his entire career from sort of a teenager until his death in 1977. The standout performance though, oh my goodness, is the young, I didn't know this actor before, his name is Austin Butler. And I've sort of seen some interviews of how he got into the part. And he really buried himself in sort of Elvis iconography and the speech patterns and the whole thing. And it's not as if he sort of does an impersonation. I mean, you can put on a southern drawl, you can put on the sort of the curl of the lip, the deep speaking voice, the glitzy white jumpsuit, the bouffant hair, and you know, you've got an Elvis impersonator. but in no way is this an impersonation. He really embodies the heart and soul of this man, and I think that was the intention of him. The scenes where he is singing are just amazing to watch. Now the movie, I sort of wrote a critique about it, and I said it's a bit like watching over 2.5 hours, 159 minutes, I believe. It's like a 159-minute trailer. It's like edited like that all the way through. There's a lot of montage scenes. They still use some of the original Elvis soundtrack, and a lot of the singing is done, especially in the early part of the movie, by Austin Butler. And I think there's an album coming out of him singing the songs from the movie. It's very well crafted and put together, and even some footage used from Elvis. So it's one of those astonishing movies where you sit there and you get to the end of it and think, oh my God, what happened over the past 2.5 hours? It's frenetic, there's no doubt about it. Very Baz Luhrmann, and some people who are Elvis fans are either going to like it or hate it. I loved it. I walked out feeling that was like a very cool piece of storytelling. So yeah, I've never been a great Elvis fan, not really sat down and listened to a lot of his music much, but as a piece of filmmaking and telling the story about the most profound entertainer from the 20th century, it was a great 2.5 hours. And I'd recommend that you go and have a look at it, even if you're not into Elvis, as some people have said in the section here, who's Elvis? I mean, there are people born in the past 20 or 30 years who may not even know who Elvis is. I was talking to some young people the other day and saying, oh, you're going to go and see the Elvis movie. Who's Elvis? So yeah, he's that far back in time that there are going to be plenty of people who don't know him. Interestingly, he met the King of Thailand, and there's quite a lot of photos of him meeting the King of Thailand. I think it was back in 1960. It doesn't seem right because the photos of him, he sort of looked older. But anyway, whenever he met him, yeah, he met the King and Queen of Thailand, King Bhumibol and Queen Sirikit. And either that or people just liking his music. Thais, there's quite a Thai Elvis impersonator industry. Now, about 3 or 4 years ago, I was invited to go to a competition here in Phuket, where all the Elvis entertainers or impersonators from around Asia got together for a sort of a Elvis impersonator competition. And I got to meet some of them and interview them, and some Thais, they just absolutely adore Elvis. And to this day, there are clubs that have Elvis impersonators that you can go to anytime and watch them. Now, a lot of them are hideous. A lot of them are just sort of costume parodies, sort of Halloween costume versions of Elvis, and don't sound anything like him and certainly don't embody the heart and soul. But yeah, he's actually a thing here in Thailand, and it might be just based around that rather famous photo, which I published in the story when I did the critique of Elvis the movie. I don't know, have any of you seen the movie? Let's just move on in the comments. When is Tim's last day and what is his plans after that? Asks Anthony Orm. Don't really want to talk very much about what I'm doing after this. It would be unprofessional of me to do so on this particular channel. So, trying to scroll, not very well. Having a break, going back to Australia. No, not going back to Australia. I'm actually going to go overseas for a week or so, but not to Australia this time. I'm actually not having a break, going straight into some new projects. I've seen that photo, says Tech Symbol. Yeah, a famous photo, and there's 4 or 5 photos of him and the King and Queen of Thailand, the former king. Tim, are you going to do an Elvis impersonation before you leave, says Key J. No, I'm not an impersonator. I'm not the sort of person who's very artistic in that way. So no, I won't be doing an impersonation. Paul Henry says, I saw Colonel Parker in 1973 at the Hilton in Las Vegas. Now, when did I last visit Las Vegas? It would have been 1983. Now, I was there for the America's Cup reporting for the Macquarie Network in Australia at the time. And so I was in America, so I did take a bit of a side trip and I went to Las Vegas. I think I saw Phyllis Diller, Neil Sedaka, and I could have seen Elvis, I suppose. Oh, no, what am I talking about? 1983, not 1973. Sorry. So, yeah, well, who was the other one? Oh, Peter Allen, the Australian entertainer. He was in Vegas at the time. My last day will be July the 29th. Eddie, another question, Tim, what is your top 3 favourite music artists? Says, ooh, look, ah. Ooh, well, favourite. I'm very, very eclectic when it comes to music. I certainly love the Beatles. I could listen to the Beatles all day. I sort of grew up as part of, I was a child of the 60s, and the Beatles were certainly part of my soundtrack. As far as music beyond that, I love the music of Burt Bacharach. He's the writer, not the performer, but I love his style of music, and I've always enjoyed the singers and the performers singing the Burt Bacharach catalogue. Beyond that, I sort of like some of the early 30s and 40s music, both classical and some of the early rock and blues music. Well, it wasn't rock at that stage, but it was leading up to that. Some of the George Gershwin song list is some of my favourite pieces of music as well. And just recently I've been a great, well, it's a long story as well, but I really enjoy the music of the South Korean band BTS. And probably in the last 7 or 8 years, they're the ones who I've been listening to the most. But my music interests are very varied and wide. Elvis probably isn't one of them, although I certainly really did enjoy watching this movie and might even have a bit more of a listen to Elvis. Question, Tim, is the 30-day visa on arrival changing to 45 days? Now, when it comes to visas from your country, you really need to check what the current status is, because some things have changed, some things haven't. And I think the Thai government are also going to be reviewing a lot of this situation with different visas. So if you are coming to Thailand, you should do your own homework and check the current visa status. Once you get here, it's a bit too late if it's a visa on arrival. I think they're certainly waiving the visa fee for a lot of countries, but depending on where you're coming from, you do need to check your current visa situation. I'm not going to go through the 171 countries at the moment. The Beatles sang 212 songs. Yeah, and a lot of them I enjoy. So, some people shocked at some of my music tastes. Well, you can be well shocked, but at the end of the day, when it comes to music, I think I'm sort of more of a historian looking at the pop and music industry sort of from outside and looking at the effect. And there's no doubt the effect of the South Korean music has had on pop currently is quite profound. I think that will be recognised in the next 30 or 40 years. Is it a fad? Is it a trend? Well, of course there are fads and artists and trends come and go. But yeah, that is making inroads at the moment. Tom Jones had a longer successful singing career than Elvis, says Will P. Yes, certainly he did. Now, we have to remember that Elvis wasn't a songwriter as such. He was basically singing other people's songs and pretty much bringing a lot of black music to a broader audience as well. Was he the right person at the right time? He sort of came along at the time. Yeah, you can argue the fors and againsts of Elvis and his good points and bad points, but yeah, he just happens to be the highest selling artist of the 20th century, and this film, I think, maps a very tragic story. But just as a piece of filmmaking, I thought it was sensational. And there's two particular scenes in the second half of the movie where they've recreated Elvis, probably in his heyday, the very early days when he was in his Las Vegas residency. before he sort of declined into the drugs and the fatness and sort of became fat old Elvis. But in those early days, he was really sort of reveling in the residency, and they've recreated two particular songs, almost the full songs, in the film, and wow, you really get your toe tapping and you just feel like you're there. And this young actor, Austin Butler, just owned, anytime he was performing, he just owned the screen. It was quite extraordinary. No Sly and the Family Stone. Yeah, I love Sly and the Family Stone, and a lot of the disco era. I sort of grew up during the disco era. I had a pair of flares, some jersey tops, and used to be a bit of a fashionista in those days. But I'm sort of glad personally that era, fashion-wise, has passed. Okay, what else are people talking about? Question, Tim, I was referring to 30-day visa on arrival for Australians. Is it changing to 45 days? I don't know, Kenneth. I'm sorry, I don't know. Obviously, I'm not travelling from Australia here, so I'm not up with the current visas. But if you contact the embassy or go to the Embassy of Thailand website in Australia, you'll be able to get that information. I'm sorry I don't have it off the top of my head. Tim, get out of your comfort zone and visit Colour in Phuket next year. No, I won't be doing that. I know the Colour Festival. It was quite controversial about a year ago. Oh, gee, I can't remember the entire story. But look, I'm not really into going to clubs and not really into crowds generally. I don't particularly like hanging around with a whole crowd of people. Happy to sit in a cinema sort of up the back all by myself and be entertained by somebody. That's a good couple of hours for me. Not really into crowds, smoky areas, people getting drunk. I don't drink myself, so yeah, I'm past that. But good luck to the people that enjoy that, and I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm not saying anything about that. I'm very happy that people can still go out and enjoy clubs and crowds. It's just not my scene anymore. Tim, did you like the Rat Pack? Yeah, the Rat Pack. Sammy Davis Jr., Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, Jerry Lewis, Steve Lawrence. Yeah, they were great entertainers of that era, and yeah, certainly enjoyed their work, and would have liked to have been perhaps 20 years older, not all the time, and been able to perhaps see them in Las Vegas. They were certainly some great entertainers. Rap music has lasted longer than I ever thought it would, says 212 Roger. Yeah, rap is a genre, and part of it encapsulated by, for example, the band BTS. And yeah, as an art form, it's certainly become a part or a niche in the popular music industry. And not a particular fan, but I really recognise the skill of some of these rappers. They're quite amazing. Engelbert Humperdinck. No, I don't think I can go as far as Engelbert Humperdinck. I think he's still performing these days. Oh yeah, I think he is. If you want to see most of the artists at once, go to the Milwaukee Summerfest. It's the largest music event in the world, says Drumkiller. Okay, good pick. Oh look, says and Liberace. No. No, draw the line at Liberace, I'm afraid. Maybe a great entertainer, but no, I never really was sold on that one. There's actually a YouTuber at the moment. I'm not going to name names, but every time he opens his mouth, it sounds like Liberace. And I just sort of have a quiet chuckle and then turn off. He's closer than you might think. Anyway, Elvis had a new hit every week in the 50s. Yeah, I mean, there was sort of the young Elvis, there was the film career Elvis, and then there was the Las Vegas Elvis. There was those three distinct sections of his career, all covered in this movie, by the way. And yeah, quite artfully done. This is not, if you sort of want to sit there and have some sort of meandering biopic that goes through the Elvis catalogue, you're not going to enjoy this. This is a frenetic video clip that goes for 159 minutes. There's montages and split screens and animation, and oh my God, it's just a visual cornucopia. But I really enjoyed it. And some scenes sort of jump out at you. Tom Parker, Colonel Tom Parker, depicted in the movie by Tom Hanks, a bit of a caricature. I don't think Tom Hanks is going to get nominated for Best Supporting Actor for that role. I think Austin Butler certainly will be nominated for Best Actor in a Leading Role. He was just outstanding. I mean, the movie's worth watching just to see the way that he embodied the late Elvis Presley. Sonny and Cher, for heaven's sake, what are you on about? Not so much Sonny, but I mean, I used to watch the Sonny and Cher show. It was one of those like Sunday night required viewing in our household for want of not much else on TV at the time. But so Cher, she certainly became an icon herself, almost a parody of herself. And she sort of got better with age. She's had so many farewell concerts. She's had more farewell concerts than Dame Nellie Melba. A lot of you wouldn't know Dame Nellie Melba. Will July be a rainy month? Oh my God, it's gone already. Will July be a rainy month? Well, yes. Yeah, we are deep into what we call the rainy season here in Thailand. The wet season yesterday, as I mentioned earlier, it sort of rained most of the day. And the rainy season roughly, and it's different in different parts of the country, goes from sort of middle of April. Songkran basically is a festival celebrating the start of the rainy season, up to sort of October, November. September and October are the wettest months in most of Thailand. There are sections along the Gulf of Thailand, for example, Hua Hin, Samui, Patasuratani, that have a wet season later in the year, but there's also an article at thetiger.com. If you type in wet season, the Thaiger on Google, you'll find a whole article that goes through the different parts of Thailand and when the wet season is. BTS has still performed their mandatory military training. Yes, basically they sort of went their separate ways just 2 weeks ago after the release of their latest album. And as young South Korean men, they will have to perform their 18 months to 2 years of military training. They've all said that they are happy to do so and looking forward to doing that in the service of their country. The oldest member, Jin, is the first to go. I think their sort of hiatus, as they're calling it, or the break, is pretty much to allow the members to go through their military training and not making a big fuss about it. Anybody cares. Elton John concerts in the early 80s were insane. Yeah, he was another one of these great performers. Elton John, a great songwriter, quite different from Elvis. He was certainly he was a songwriter and a performer, but never sort of quite had that, or the looks or the panache of Elvis, but he certainly knew how to hold and perform to an audience. I loved his music. Perhaps liked his music more than I enjoyed his performance. Oh, here's a great one from the Wu-Tang Life. Yeah, I'm with you on this one. My 70s band is Earth, Wind and Fire. There wasn't a track that Earth, Wind and Fire did that I didn't enjoy. Seen a few video clips of them probably about 10 years ago performing with David Foster. And yeah, some of their music, some of their renditions are just mighty fine. Love Earth, Wind and Fire. My favourite of theirs would be either September or Fantasy. Both great songs. Being born in the 1950s, music from the 50s to the late 70s is the favourite of Rachel Masters. Thank you very much, Rachel. Lawrence Welk says 212 Roger. No. Lawrence Welk doesn't make it, although I'm aware of his work. Grateful Dead, says Alan Goodman. I'm a watch it on the plane to Bangkok. Look, I tell you what, if you do want to go and see the movie Elvis, go to a cinema and watch it. Don't watch it on a plane. Don't watch it on your TV at home. Go and watch it in a big cinema because it's epic. It's so in your face that you're going to get a lot more enjoyment out of it watching it in the cinema. One of those films you just have to go to the cinema. Listen to me on that one. I wanted Bangkok to get to normal. Jason, as much as getting back to normal is going to sort of happen. Bangkok is back to normal. Yeah, look, I mean, there's still some shops closed, but gee, the traffic is definitely back to normal. You don't have to wear a mask in public anymore. Things are open until 2 a.m. if you want to go out and have a good night out. So I don't know how back to normal you want things to get. But believe me when I say that the 2 years from, say, April 2020 to now have changed everything. And there's not going to be any getting back to like pre-2020 times anywhere in the world. It has affected everything. We're now going to go through a sort of a bit of a hangover of what happened during those last 2 years, financially, economically. Personally, I've lost 2 friends to COVID-19 and plenty of other people who have been quite sick. So I recognise how it's affected their lives from a very personal level. But there's not going to be any getting back to normal. There's going to be this long hangover. And some things are going to pick up quicker than others. Some things are just never going to come back the way that they were. But yeah, we're looking at a time of great change now. And we're going to see changes of governments. Governments being blamed for the poor economies and for the way that they reacted to COVID-19. And the public are going to take it out on these governments. So that's going to be an interesting time as we sort of move into this new normal. But we're never getting back to where we were as far as tourism's concerned, as far as general travel around the world, as it was pre-2020. I'm very confident of that. ELO, BTO, Bachman Turner Overdrive, fantastic. Boston Foreigners, ZZ Top, Led Zeppelin, yeah, all great bands, but I put none of them. They're all enjoyable for their catalogues, but I wouldn't say any of them are my favourites. Certainly recognise some great work by all those performers. Tim's a smart guy and leave young Thais to carrying his mission. Yeah, let's not talk about me leaving. I certainly look forward to, I don't know if I'm on Good Morning Thailand next week. I'm back in Bangkok from tonight, but there's plenty of changes going on at the Thaiger. Jay's doing a great job handling the sort of new direction in the video. I'm not sure if I'll be on the program next week or not. I think I'll be doing my sort of Saturday stint until the end of July. So certainly I'm going to look forward to being with you, at least on the Saturday morning, so we can have a bit of a chin wag. Talking today, I don't know, we got sort of sidetracked. Have never seen Kata Koron beaches so clean. I suppose now Thailand opened the rubbish on the beaches will return. This is from Roger Jeffries. Yeah, look, the beaches in Phuket, the beaches anywhere in Thailand are looking spectacular at the moment. You might say that there was real mass tourism around Thailand pre-2020, and we're not going to see those numbers. Some 40 million international travellers coming to Thailand. That's not coming back anytime soon. Take out the Chinese and the Russians at the moment, and even if the situations in both those countries changed radically in the short term, they're going to have their own hangovers that are going to prevent a lot of people travelling from those countries for a number of years. They're not suddenly just going to flip the switch to wanting to travel back to Thailand. That's not going to happen. In the case of Russia, it's going to be a long, long, long time. In the case of China, there's a lot of Doobie Brothers. Doobie Brothers, yes, loved the Doobie Brothers music. But in the case of China, it's going to be a long time before they are going to be travelling back to Thailand in anywhere near the numbers they were. But they will return. The middle class of China is still growing. It's the fastest growing middle class in the world, but they've got their own economic problems and hangover that they're going to have to go through. So they're not coming back to Thailand anytime soon. Did you see Santana in Bangkok with Carabio? No, Alan, I didn't. I've been to quite a few concerts though in Bangkok over the years since I've been here. Certainly do miss the theatre world and some of the nightlife that I used to enjoy back in Melbourne. But yeah, certainly when some of the big artists do come to Thailand, I'd go out of my way to try and catch up with them. Kel Ali, hypothetically speaking, if the police use these new steel forks on you, Tim, and Jay would get out of it. Oh, yes, there was a story during the week. Oh my God. Why the Thai police thought that we need to see this. They were showing how they would cope with a foreigner who'd sort of gone AWOL and lost his shit, and they had these pitchforks, if you like, trying to sort of control him and bring him down onto the ground. And I think their intention was to show how competent the Thai police are and how safe we are coming to Thailand, that they'll be able to cope with foreigners. It horrified me. It made me thought, I don't really want to go to Pattaya if that's the way that they're going to cope with foreigners. So yeah, that was a taser, a spray. Gee, there's a whole lot of better ways to cope with somebody with a knife. That was a rather funny story. I'll be writing an editorial about that. I think I'm calling it how to influence people, how to make friends and use a taser. I think that's the headline I was using on the particular story. I'm surprised nobody's mentioned the band The Police. Loved The Police and their individual work when they disbanded as well. Yes, Police, another great band. I think GMT misses your insights. Fleetwood Mac, Stevie Nicks. Yeah, I've seen a lot of documentaries over the past couple of years about Fleetwood Mac and their early recordings and the relationships within the band. Stevie Nicks as the lead singer. Yeah, thoroughly enjoyed the music of Fleetwood Mac as well. Will you watch this show after you leave the Thaiger? Well, I think when I leave the Thaiger, I'll leave the Thaiger. I'll remain a shareholder, but after 6 years with the brand, I'll be personally moving on and probably won't be, I'll have other things to do besides sort of looking over my shoulder. So that's my sort of short answer there. So it appears that we may have sort of got to the end of our chat. There's been some interruption on the internet, but I've been waffling on for an hour and 10 minutes. So it is Dire Straits, Def Leppard, Righteous Brothers. Paul Weston suggesting I call the editorial Forked If I Know. Hello Tim, at least he wasn't shot by the police. It was just absurd watching that. Oh dear. I enjoy writing about that. Ross Dog's Broken Spirit says Kenobi was awful. Yeah, I watched the Disney Hotstar here in Thailand anyway, with a release. I think it was only 6 episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi, one of these Star Wars spin-offs. I enjoyed it, didn't love it, but I enjoyed it. It was pretty dark. Yeah, anyway. Food, of course, Tim Will, Kansas. Yes, enjoyed James Taylor. Yes, Toto. Yeah, Toto, more of a sort of a studio band. Eagles. Yeah, a bit one-paced, but I remember I had my first romantic dance and my first kiss listening to the Eagles. Some things you don't forget. That was a long time ago. Doobie Brothers. Anyway, there we go. It's time for me to say goodbye. I do thank you very much for watching. Thank you to the members especially for your contributions and for your kind support of our YouTube channel. Thank you very much to those people who donated. I think you'll see next week where that money is going to. And Jay and Natty, no doubt, bringing you the very latest in that particular situation. But the Thaiger donating all your kind money to a very deserving charity and a particular project, and that's from the Bangkok Community Help Foundation. But from me and the Thaiger, time to sign off, time for my shirt to say goodbye. Thank you very much to Dean and DeLuca for putting up with me over the past hour. I did pay for my own cup of tea, thank you very much. And as I said earlier, make sure you go and see Elvis the movie, because you will enjoy it. Certainly an experience. But go and see it in a cinema. Don't be cheap and wait till it comes out on video. What comes out on video these days doesn't happen, does it? Don't wait until it comes out on a streaming service near you. Thank you, and it's great to be with you again. I really enjoy these chats on Saturday mornings. Jay will be on Thaiger Weekend Update tomorrow, so join him and give him plenty of support. But from me, I'll say have a fantastic Saturday, and we'll see you later.